Hello everyone, welcome back to computational thinking course. In this video, we will talk about looping and iterations in Python. So to begin with, we will make some quick review on how to develop a code manually. So before the midterm exam, we already seen um, to write a code by using pseudocode, or the other way around is to using flowcharts. So you still need to remember that there are certain symbols that you can use on developing a code or a program by using flowcharts. So if you still remember, the program must start with the oval symbols, and it should also end with start symbols. You can use this square box, this rectangular box for process, and for input, you can use these symbols. And if you have decisions, you can use these symbols, and if there are several options, you can use these circle symbol as the connectors. So actually what we will learn in looping is normally relate to the decision symbol. So the decision symbol relate closely what we will learn today. There are some important remarks about developing a programs by using flowcharts. So the first note is that there should be only one start at the beginning, but you might have several ends at the end, because due to conditional selections, you might ended up with several ends on how the program will stop, for examples. So, and the input or output and process symbol should only have one incoming and one outgoing arrow. So be careful with the arrows. And the decision symbol should only have one incoming and two outgoing, that there will be yes or no. So we will learn on how to use the decision symbols based on the Python looping program after this. And also decisions is filled with questions that will be answered by yes or no. So it's a simple yes or no questions whether the program will be keep calculating or it will stop. So this is where the loop will be in a flowchart, but we will see on how to develop a code in Python based on the knowledge on the decisions in a flowchart. So a program, be it in a flowchart, pseudocode, or now we are writing in a proper programming language like Python, there are three basic structures of a program. So it can be sequentials, conditions or selections, or loop. So conditions and selections, we already seen it by using if in the last meeting, and sequential is what we've learned throughout the first part of the semester, where you write the code sequentially line to line, and you can see that the program are being executed every lines until it reach the end conditions. So it is actually a block of program that is executed from top to the bottom in a sequence way. And we have conditions and selections like last week, where we have ifs or else or elif. That is actually a block of program that is executed to previously evaluated conditions. So if it matches the conditions, just like last week when you input some item into the list and you compare those items, for example, if the first letter of the first and the last name are identical, and then the decisions will be printing some text. So that is condition selections. And what we will learn today is the last part of the structure of a program by using loop. So block of program is executed repeatedly as long as the conditions is met. So it is actually based on what kind of statement that we put on the conditions block actually. So if the answer is keep meeting yes, and it will be looping the entire calculations until the option for no is reached. In a simple way, the flow chart on the left side of your screen shows the very basic examples of a looping or iterations flowchart structure. So we can see here that in the conditions block, it has some statement normally, and then you will have two options whether the answer will be yes or no, or true or false. For example, here that there are initial conditions check in each loop, and as long as the conditions are met, for example, if the answer is always true, or suited to the equations inside the condition block, and then the process will be keep back to the upper side of the flowchart, and then it will keep repeating the calculations until the false statement is reached, or until the false statement is met then. And then it will maybe probably after process 8 will be the end of the program. But as long as the answer is true, it will keep repeating by itself or looping. That's why we call it looping or iterations until some criteria for the program to stop is met. As you already recall some of the previous materials from flowchart, now we can move into the condition selections or loopings or iterations by using Python. The first instructions in Python for a looping or iterations is while. So while is a functions in Python. So normally the loop structures will be using while, and it can be used for the majority of looping cases in Python. So the while functions in Python normally represents the decision symbols in a flowchart. So we can normally use while and combine it with other functions such as break, continue, or else. It really depends on the type of the program that you want to have. So normally after typing while, and it will be followed by some lines that will be executed as long as the conditions checks remains true. So as long as the value are still met, and then it will keep looping the process until the false criteria are met. So there are two ways to develop a loop in Python. So the first one is what we call as the counter controlled, and the second one is the sentinel controlled. Well, let's begin with the counter control. So basically, counter controlled represents a loop that has a definite amount of steps for it to count. So the loop structures use counter variables. So we define it at the beginning. So for example, in our classroom, we have 41 students. If I want to make a program to calculate the average score of a midterm test, I already know that there are 41 students and there will be 41 calculations or steps of calculations to get the average value, or I can sum the entire score and divide it with the n number of 41. That is for counter control. But what if I work in a supermarket and their customer comes in and he want to check out his shopping charts, and I don't even know, and he or she doesn't know also how many items there are in the shopping chart, for example. That's where the idea of the sentinel controlled loop comes. So the loop will be executed as long as there is no specific value or sentinel value. So sentinel is like a key that we need to type for the program to stop. So it can be some like -1, 0, or the word stop itself being entered, and then the program will be stopped. So for Sentinel, it doesn't have a definite amount of calculations. It will keep the calculations runs as long as the magic word are not being inputted. In this slide, you can see that an example of a counter-controlled flowchart to calculate the average score or total average of a total score of a certain amount of students. In this case, we have 10 students, and it has one starts and it has one ends. And as long as the value are made, it will keep looping until until we enter the 10th student scores. So we need to make an input of the score from students number 1 until student number 10. After the score of students number 10 are being input into the screen, and the program will begin to calculate the average score by make the sum of the total score and divide it with 10. And at the end, it has an output to print the average score. So this is in a flowchart. How does it look like in a Python code? So we will see on the next slide. Here on the right side of your screen, you can see the Python code. So first you need to keep in mind that you need to declare the variables from the beginning. So we have three variables, that is counter, total, and rata, or average for samples. So, or you can write AVG in English. So counter, total, and average should have zero value at the beginnings because we don't know what is the value. So it has to be kept zero at the beginning, unless you have some initial value you can put other than zero in the variable. So then we begin the loop with while, and the word counter, the variable of counter, should stop when it reaches 10. And then we need to input the grade of the first to the 10th student. So the first students, we don't forget to use the integer functions, because we will input numbers for the program to be able to make some arithmetic calculations. It has to be integer, so keep in mind. And then this is the line 7. This is where we sum the grade. So total plus equal grade, it means that every items that are being inputted in input grade on the 6th line will be added into the mathematical function. So the counter with the symbol plus and equal 1 means that it will keep asking for an input until the count reach number 10. And then we will have the average score that is equal to total, that is has been summed by the functions on the line number 7 and divided by 10. And we need to print at the end the average grade is the average score from line number 10. So we will have 7.5 as the average score from students number 1 up to students number 10. This example shows the using of sentinel control program. So the flow chart here, the sentinel controlled value is -1. So it has no actual counter until -1 is being typed or being inputted into the program. So here it will start, it has the same initial value of counter equal to 0, total equal to 0, average equal to 0. Then you will need to input the grade, and if the grade being inputted is equal to -1, it will calculate the average value by summing the entire grade, then divided by the amount of counter that has been inputted. So then, or else, if the value is not -1, it will keep adding the value and sum it in a total value. Then if we input -1, it will stop the questions to make an input, and then it will take the average value and print the average value, and the program will be stopped. But this program has a flaw. What if we type -1 from the very beginning? And it will stop the program itself. So there are other options for the sentinel value other than -1. Let's say stop. If we put or choose 0, it will also stop the calculations. But if we type stop in quote and quote, it will require us to type stop for the program to stop the counter. And now let's see the example of the Python code for the sentinel control program. So here we see that it is similar with the previous one, where we have counter controlled program. It starts with the counter, total, and average they have a 0 value at the beginning. But the difference is here, where we don't have the exact amount of steps where the calculations will stop. So here, while grade exclamation mark equal to -1, it will keep calculating until we input -1 and the program will stop. So for example, here down here where when the program is being run, you can see the first input is 8, second input is 9, third input is 10, fourth input is 9 again, and the fifth input is 8, and then the last input we type -1. So the program will stop and it will calculate the average value, that is the sum or total, divided by counter. So total is the amount of grade that has been added. So plus with equal symbol means it will add every value that has been input into the program. And counter plus equal 1, that means the amount of counter that has been used during the entire iterations or entire loop. The second functions in Python for the applications of loopings or iterations is for. So the loop structure using for in Python is more commonly used for iterations on lists, dictionary, or tuple. So we already learned about list, dictionary, and tuple last week. Set or string data structure. So it's normally for text, for example. Although it still can be used for counter-controlled loops problems where it involves some mathematical operations, but normally people use for text data, so to say. So this is how the for functions look like normally in a Python language. So we type for, and then there's the variables for the iterators, and then we have in and the data structures next to it, where normally data structures can be list, tuple, dictionary, or strings. And then there will be lines outside of the blocks, and the block will be executed as long as the conditions check remains true. And for example, if the variable iterator is still valid as a member of the data structure, so it will keep on looping. When using while, we have the counter controlled or sentinel controlled as a conditions for the program to stop. But when we are using for, we have a functions that call as range to define when the program to stop. So the definite loop using for can be stopped by using these three functions in Python: start, stop, or step. So start normally has a default value of 0, and stop, it is the stop number, just like the sentinel counter, and we have step. So it's the amount of increase. It can be normally the default value should be 1, and it will keep counting as long as the step is met. So in this slide, we can see the combinations of iterations, and we combine the iterations or looping with dictionary that we have learned last week. So for example, here we have dictionary as a variable mybook that is an empty dictionary. And now we are asking the user to type the input for the dictionary of mybook. So we can see here the first questions for the input and how many data that we want to add to the dictionary. So it has to be numbers, so therefore we type integer here, and then we are using for to keep the loop working, and for I in range, so the range is the amount of steps that we want to have, and then we have the number of entries that we have just execute on the second line. And then we are, as we know from dictionaries, there will always be a pair between key and value. And then we need to ask what is the key variables, and then what is the value for that key that we just asked on the fifth line. And then we will store it in the mybook dictionary, as we can see here, and it will add until the number of key has been met. For example, here, if when we run it and say that we have 4 numbers of input or entries that we want to have in our dictionaries, and then the enter key 1 is name, and the key value for name, for example, is prima. The second key value is the second key is age, and the key value is 30. And then we have the third key is hobby, and the key value is reading. The fourth key is home or address, and the last key value is depot. And the last line of the code is my book. It will print the entire dictionary that has been stored
into the program. So this program is actually asking us to make some input and store those informations into a dictionary. So these are the dictionary that we have input into the program, or else we can show the output or print the output in this form of line. For example, here for key, comma, value in mybook.items, we will read each item in the key and the key value. So earlier in this video, we have seen the program to calculate the average grade for 10 students with using counter control in while functions. Now let's use for to calculate the average grade and see which way produce more effective program, so to say. So here the main difference is that the initial value, we just need to declare the initial value for total and average, where the counter equal to 0 is not required. So there is no need to put at 1 to counter when using for, because this is the benefit of using for, and it will reduce us one line of code, or 2 lines actually, because we don't have counter equal to 0 here, and the program will look like this. So for I in range of 10, and then the grade equal to integer input of the grade, and the 6th line of the code is to sum the entire grade of every student from student number 1 to student number 10. So total is the sum of the grade, and then line 8 will calculate the average value of the score. So then we will have the average grade being printed at the end of the program, so to say. So this is the functions or the program to calculate the average value of 10 number of students by using for. So you can see the difference and compare it with the counter control with using while in the previous examples. So this is the assignment that you need to work individually. So the problem is a student's dreams to travel abroad and decided to save money from his guitar teaching class. So he has an initial money of 1 million rupiahs in his bank account. So the bank gives an interest of 0.05% per month based on the current balance of his account. So his target is to reach 20 millions. You need to write a Python code program to calculate how many months it will take for the students to reach their target savings. The input of the program is how much the students will save per month and add to his account. The program should also display the savings balance at the end of each month to help the students monitor their progress. So you can try to use while or for to solve this program. And you need to also add that the interest will be added every month. So let's say that you have 0.05% of 1 million, and then for the second month and the third month it will be added up. So it's called compound interest. You need to have a look on how to calculate the compound interest before proceed with this assignment. So good luck on working on the assignment individually. Thank you.